Mvskoke Media presents What is the 1866 Treaty? In April 1861, the Civil War broke out in the United States shortly after President Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated president. This resulted in the withdrawal of federal troops from Indian Territory, which later became modern-day Oklahoma. The 5 civilized tribes were, at this point, well established in the territory, and the withdrawal of these troops put them in a difficult position. Soon, Albert Pike, representing the Confederate government, showed up in the territory to secure agreements with the tribes. While other tribes, such as the Choctaw and Chickasaw, were united in support of the Confederacy, the Creek Nation was divided, with almost an equal number of troops on both sides of the war. April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant, effectively ending the Civil War. September 1865, the federal government and the 5 civilized tribes met to negotiate at the Fort Smith Council. Commissioner of Indian Affairs Dennis N. Cooley informed the tribes that because they had sided with the Confederacy, the tribes had forfeited their rights, annuities, and land claims under previous treaties. The federal government was going to ignore the fact that 3 of 5 tribes had been divided in support of the Confederacy. New agreements would have to be drafted and signed, and the federal government required certain provisions in each treaty. The treaties would grant amnesty for crimes committed against the United States during the war, but required that the tribes abolish slavery, incorporate freedmen into their citizenship, and give up part of their lands for other tribal settlement. August 11, 1866, the Creek Treaty was signed and proclaimed. The ramifications for these agreements would last for over 150 years. Before Europeans stepped foot on the North American continent, southeastern tribes had already established a long history of capturing enemy combatants in raids and utilizing them as slaves. These slaves were sometimes incorporated into the tribe through intermarriage and tribal ceremony. Generations of literal and later ceremonial combat between tribes and tribal towns led to an intricate web of intermarriages and adoptions that formed the basis of the importance of the Creek tribal town and clan affiliation that citizens continue to this day. Indeed, an argument could be made that this process eventually led to the formation of the Creek Confederacy and its required political and familial agreements and alliances. Up until the 1866 treaty, some freedmen, as well as Europeans and members of other tribes, had been incorporated into the Creek tribe through these traditional methods. It is important to recognize a distinction from this cultural practice and the economic model of slavery that was introduced to Native Americans by European contact, which emphasized the utilization of humans as property and part of a business model. With the signing and ratification of the 1866 treaty, freedmen became citizens in the Creek Nation, regardless if they had been assimilated into the tribe by traditional methods or not. It is this distinction between the methods of obtaining membership for freedmen that has resulted in the long and bitter fight to decide the citizenship of the Creek Nation. Even now, legal battles are fought over the application of the 1866 treaty with the Creeks in regard to citizenship as well as tribal jurisdiction. At the United States Supreme Court, the validity of the 1866 treaty is a key element of the Mvskoke Creek Nation's argument for expansion of the tribal jurisdiction, even though the Mvskoke Creek Nation Constitution does not allow for freedmen to be citizens of the tribe, a requirement stipulated in the treaty. Forged in the Civil War reconstruction effort, the 1866 treaty continues to be a firebrand in relations between the 5 civilized tribes, freedmen, and the federal government.